Hey, thanks so much for tuning into episode 30. In this particular episode, Gaz and I ran into a slight issue with our cameras because we have a slightly different setup with different cameras, and at different stages, both of them died. Doesn't really take too much away from the episode. This is only for the YouTube as well, not for the audio episode. So, yeah, it just becomes slightly comical as things start to fall apart towards the end. But the episode as a whole is still intact. Enjoy.
Welcome to our board game podcast, A Master's Degree in Rolling Terribly. I'm your host, Gaz, and again, I'm in charge, and I'm letting the power go to my head. But joining me is a man, who regularly takes us under his wing, and when he flaps, the crowd goes wild as we fly to victory. Daddy! Say hi, Daddy.
Hi, Daddy. Yeah, hi, bird. Like, joining me is a bird.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. That's the best Freudian slip, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you keep going on about how you're a bird bot, so I
Yeah,
thought
I am.
let's lean into it
I
and
am.
just give you what you want. You clearly want to be a bird or replaced by a bird,
There's
so
nothing else that I do in the scenarios that I'm recognized for other than bird botting. That's the only part
oh,
everyone remembers, right? If I'm killing debris in order to save the scenario and I kill myself in the process, no one remembers it. But if Phil does the
but,
same thing afterwards, everyone's like, yeah,
but that's
amazing.
because Bill was a champion, actually did it, right? Like it's like, if Boromir had there was a guy before Boromir who was like, I'm gonna save you, hobbits, and then he just got shot and died, right? And then Boromir took like, all the orcs and took all the arrows and let them get away, kind of. I think no, they got captured still. But anyway, he did a good crack at it. But no
Spoilers.
one no one remembers the other guy just got shot and died. That was you. You were just like, hey guys, I've got this. Bleh, carked it, and then Phil's like, okay, now I'm actually going to do it.
So I'm
And then
pre-Boromir is what I'm hearing.
yeah, that's it. You're not Boromir. So,
Awesome. It's
but
exactly what I
but
want.
anyway, tweet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Flap,
it.
flap.
Flap. So, do you think that when you use birds, are you just like sending out a flock of birds that pick us up and fly us around, or do you like eat birds and give everyone bird power with your bird magic? I don't know. How do you see the thematics of using
I've
birds?
never actually thought about it. I think it's a Gandalf thing. I think I just whisper into the wind and a whole bunch of owls come out and pick us up and carry us a couple of spaces and then go.
A couple of spaces. So like these giant owls come
Yeah.
out or birds come out, pick us up and move us 12 feet, right? That's it. And then they
Yes.
just fly away
Then
into
they
the distance.
leave and until I
Yeah.
have a rest. So,
Yeah. Okay. Until you have a rest. And they're like, oh, we'll come back and move
yeah.
everyone another 12 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't
Okay.
get to move 12 feet,
No,
right?
no, no, no. There's not enough birds for that. There's just
No.
birds for 2 to 3 people. So
That's right.
Uh, yeah, cool. Well, look, I am clearly running the show today, so I will stumble through my best and try to make Daddy feel as awkward as he can because he hasn't done any prep because he can't because I didn't do any prep. So, but today, what we'll be going through is scenario 35, so the scrap pit. Where we got to escort old mate Crain, and as he went dumpster diving for robot bits to build some contraption that only seemed to be useful when we got it. Uh, but we did get to kick some more robot ass, right? So that was cool. Like until oh, we'll get into it, but until there was lots, I was like, yeah, robots. Robots are cool. I like fighting robots. And then there was heaps. It's like, oh yeah, no, I don't like robots. So
Yeah,
uh
well, it wasn't exactly a Royal Rumble of robots either. We only had the one type we were going up against. We still had weird stuffs like skeletons are suddenly making the biggest resurgence again, and they're
yeah.
suddenly like everywhere now.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like enemy number one. Oh, well, bandits would be, but like enemy number two, like you see them at the very beginning of the game almost, and it's almost like now we're just getting heaps of them.
Yeah. Well they were right. In Gloomhaven there was like other than bandits, they were like the staple enemy.
Yeah, well, actually, the skeleton I think was like the f- like the last enemy in the first scenario Because you're
That's
entering
right,
like some
because it
kind of
was
crypt or something.
yeah, because it was bandits in the front room, and then the archers bandits in that long corridor, which they was really bad. And then the last room was uh two skeletons, I think, at
Mm,
the and then archer bandits at the back. So sorry, spoilers if anyone hasn't played the first scenario of Gloomhaven.
yeah,
Um, you
skeletons in
probably
that
shouldn't be
room.
listening to this podcast. But yeah, it is. So it's weird because we haven't seen them that much in Frosthaven, so it's kind of good to have them back.
Yeah, and always happy to have
Uh,
things that have feet.
yeah, that's it. Well, legs. It's all about legs, right? I think that's the complaints from you and Phil the last couple of scenarios. Is like, oh, why haven't these things got legs that need to go onto the ground?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and what else are we going to do? So we're also going to have a vague look at the road event and our post event, and just give you enough, just enough of a discussion so that people are going to want to listen to our amDirt Raw episode, right? Just almost like a teaser. And I'm in that process. I'll try and between now and then I'll try and remember what it was, and and then lastly, Deddy doesn't know this, and this is where we're going to put him on the spot and get his opinions about things. But
Oh, good.
I want to talk about solo scenarios
Uh-huh.
because I've just done mine. You've done yours a couple of weeks ago, and some of the other guys in the group have had a crack at theirs. So just want to have a not deep dive into it, but just a feeling. We've seen about four of them now, and are they fun to play? What kind of place do they have in here, etc., etc.
Hmm.
And do that. And if we have time, I have a bonus kind of thing to talk about.
Hmm.
But we'll see if we've got time. We might shift that to next time I host another 30 episodes.
I want bonus. Come on, let's
Yeah.
get to the
Well,
bonus.
I got to get through it quickly. So,
Uh,
cool. So, I mean, I guess before we jump into the scenario, is there anything from that you wanted to bring up from the week, the games, anything you've been seeing in the socials for Frosthaven, anything burning hot
no,
that you want to talk about?
not off the top of my head in regards to any of that. Although, like, I don't know if it's related or not, etc. But Baldur's Gate 3 came out today, and that's like Frosthaven, kind of. And I think
Yeah, basically
everyone's,
the same thing.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I'm looking forward to playing at some stage. But no, other than that, there hasn't been a great deal. I did want to actually mention very quickly about something I actually was talking about last week and never actually got to. It was part of my agenda, and I just want to use this as an opportunity to say that kind of like our guidance towards what we have a lot of people that message us and go, "Oh, I think this is a great idea," because we actually reaching out regarding class options and how do we do this and that kind of stuff. And a lot of people kind of volunteer that kind of information, and we definitely appreciate that kind of guidance sort of stuff. People also are understand under the understanding that we don't want obviously spoilers for our campaign, so people are treading lightly in there. And this is, I think Dwarf actually had to mention something about your next potential character when we eventually see it, but he checked with you first and was like, you know, hey, do you mind if I tell you at least this class
Mm.
symbol? I'm not going to tell you how to unlock it. Like, what are your thoughts on that kind of communication? We're fine with it, right?
Oh, I love it. It's great. And I think even earlier in one of our first episodes when we were getting rules wrong every single week, which we probably still are now, but no one knows about it. I think we had someone message us and say, "Hey, I noticed there was a rule thing that you didn't do quite right. Do you want us to tell
Mm,
you?" I can't remember who that was. And I mean, that's such a nice way of going about it because we could just be ourselves and be like, "No, we don't want to hear about it. Cool, see you later."
mm,
But at least they give us the opportunity, right? So more than happy for people to write in and say, "Hey, you guys mentioned this on the podcast, or you were talking about this kind of aspect of the game. I've got a bit more info for you that might help. Do you want to know it or not?" Right?
mm.
And then that gives us the chance to opt in. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's great. You know, the more community engagement, the better.
Mhm.
It just don't post, "Oh yeah, don't worry, guys. This is coming up in the next few scenarios, so look forward to it,"
Mm.
because that's not what we want.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love it. Keep it coming when it does come, and yeah, we'll
Awesome.
navigate around it.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll probably do this in order, in some kind of weird order. So
Hmm.
sorry for those that are used to some kind of structure, because I'm
Hey, it's
just
your
making this
rules,
up
man. It's your
yeah, that's
rules.
it.
It's your
I
show.
know. Yeah, my show. That's it. So it's amDirt uncut. Well, although it will probably still be edited. All right, let's go straight for the road event. All right. So, Daddy, what was the road event?
So our road event was a road event we had at the very beginning of our campaign. It was one that we probably had about 2 or 3 episodes in, and it was I wouldn't say it was, like, mind-blowingly interesting, but at the time, it's interesting the fact that it's come up again,
Mm.
and when we were reading it, we actually remember it, which answer we picked, and then we got to see the second response. Now, the only drawback about this event is this is kind of like a berries event in a way, because it's going to keep cycling through and we're going to keep getting it. There's no way this event leaves. So that's the only part that I'm a little bit like, oh, okay, cool. It allows you to see both sides of it. But in the same moment, it was a little bit lackluster because it was like, oh, nothing overly exciting new. Hold on, we have an option here that is new, but then also not the most exciting and new thing, right? So it was a mixture of both, but it was completely fine. It was just cool to see. Funny, actually, in that I think someone mentioned we are a slightly different party maker. So
Yeah,
when
well,
we
no one was
came,
there.
yeah. So when we came across the event, the characters didn't know what was the right answer. So I mean, that made it a little bit more different.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a weird one, and maybe we can expand on this more in our amDirt Raw episode that's going to come out straight after this. But it's I don't know. Now that we know the answer, we just know what to do.
Correct.
I mean, and I don't know. How do you feel about that as a scenario or a road event that's just going to kind of randomly pop up, and now we know the correct answer, so we just choose that every time?
I don't. I would dislike it if the deck of road events was small, so
Mm.
small-ish. It's based on the amount that's in there. Look, it's not as big as the Outpost event decks. It's, I'm assuming, going to get bigger. But yeah, I do worry that if I do see it again, you know, within the campaign, at least once or twice, I'm probably going to get disappointed when I
Mm.
do see it again. But I mean, yeah, that's just the risk of letting them go back in, which there are times that we do answer something and then it's gone. We don't know what
Mm.
the other response is, and it's like, oh no, we'll never know. So this is in a way answering it, right?
Yeah, and that was the only part of it that I think was really good is that we go, oh, we get to see what the other side said, right? Knowing that we chose poorly the first time. I guess it's weird because we're like a quarter of the way through. Like we just started summer, our second summer. So, being that there's kind of 4 years, we probably 25% through-ish. I feel like this has come up now twice in what is, and because this is just the summer deck, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so this has come up twice in the summer deck.
Hmm.
So, I mean, we're gonna get it 2 times every summer? That kind of feels a bit weird, but yeah,
I
I don't know.
think there should have been just a slight thing on the end if you have already done the other side of this or whatever. Once you've done side, if we already picked A, if you've seen both A and B, maybe remove it or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Small thing,
Yeah.
but
Anyway,
yeah.
cool. So we got through that. We got some cool bonuses, which I can't remember that were.
Yeah. They were
Yeah,
buffs.
see? Pardon?
They were buffs.
Were they?
Yeah.
Like ward?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So we got through, and then we got to go into scenario 35. So scenario 35 is what we unlocked from is that from the first page of the puzzle book? I believe this is the first because this is Robot Land. We cleared
Uh,
through the
no.
robot.
This
No.
we got this from the section at the same timing as when we got the puzzle book. So
Ah, okay.
we've rescued Crain. He was too exhausted to do anything. We had to put a calendar event in. He woke up. He gave us this scenario, and then it said read another section, and then we read that section, and they gave us the puzzle book.
Yeah, okay, cool, cool.
Yeah.
So all right, sweet. So we had this scenario unlocked for a while, but we've been sidetracked with different scenarios and like retirement ones and bits and pieces. So I think
Yeah.
we kind of went main story and then we've jumped around. We thought, all right, well, let's go back into Robot Land. And yeah, basically, Crane wants to go dig through and get some robot bits. I can't remember if there's any more to the fluff than that. And yeah, it was an interesting one to start with. So uh, you had it all set up. We started, and I saw that we had a little mini on the board for him, right? So we
Yep.
had a mini on there for Crane,
Hmm.
and instantly I'm like, oh, cool, we get to escort more people, right? And
Yeah, always fun.
it, yeah, and then starting near him were a bunch of skeletons, which are going to attack two targets, some spitting drakes, which are going to attack at range, and I think there might have been a robot or two, right? So it was in which can explode and do AoE damage. So it was a very interesting room to go. Okay, cool. We've got to protect this guy. He's kind of already in the middle of the room,
Yeah.
and so we don't really know what's going to happen.
His initial positioning was a little questionable because he was in the middle. He was already next to the thing that because his goal was to get to these debris and put a token on them at the end of every turn. Um, and the part that worried me was, yeah, his positioning, but also the type, like you said, the type of monsters that were out there, but also spitting drakes I hadn't seen yet. So I know they were in Gloomhaven, and I remember their standee, but I hadn't seen them or had a reminder of what they did. Because you and Mark have played digital, you probably are a little bit more familiar with them, at least a little bit more recently. Because I went into this going, oh, cool. Whenever I see a new mob, I'm like, oh, I don't really remember or kind of know how that's gonna like interact with us. So that, and of course, to top it all off, they're flying, right? So, it's the third scenario in a row now we've done with flying mobs when we've got two people that like to litter the ground with crap. Three if you include you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you guys were complaining about legs. That's all I heard. There's not enough legs, not enough legs, not enough legs. So, it was an interesting one. And it's a weird combination of monsters as well. Like it's uh yeah, skeletons, robots, and drakes didn't really seem to be like kind of part of each other. So anyway, we started the scenario. It was a smallish room. It looked a bit clogged, and knowing that we're gonna have people throwing crap everywhere, and our bone shape is gonna be sending his minions out everywhere. I was looking at this going, this is gonna get full really, really quickly.
Yeah.
So I guess the first couple of turns were interesting, and our objective was basically that he has to dig through these piles of stuff. So he started next to this pile. He's going to go at initiative 50, and he's going to move up. And it kind of, you made the comparison to scenario 14, where we had to go to the lurker crown and dig it out. So spend 8 rounds next to it and put damage tokens on. That's kind of like what was happening here, except he was doing the digging. So
Yes.
he was going to move next to the pile of trash, and he was going to spend 3 rounds digging it. So at the end of the round, you put a token on it, and at the start of the round, it if it's got three, then it triggers and he moves on. Right?
Yep.
He goes, haha, read a piece, and he finds something. And so he started close there, and then he was going to move on through. And I think in it, it said once he's finished digging through stack E, I think it was, then we're good. So we kind of
Mm-hmm.
figured there was going to be a few more. So yeah, I mean, like the first room was interesting. There's lots of stuff. The first card that the Spitting Drakes drew was stun,
Mm.
and we've
Yeah.
talked about this. Like having a disarm or a stun on a like normal attack with no prerequisites is really brutal, especially when there's two ranged mobs on there that someone's gonna get hit, right?
Like definitely, and we've got the cavalry of skeletons and all that, but regardless of that, they do. I don't remember whether or not that was a reset card, but the majority of their attacks, they've got a couple that do poison. They've got innate muddle, which is already annoying, and they have massive AoEs and other ranged attacks that have at target, right, or targeting multiple. And of course, they're situated on the other side of obstacles. So amazing. This is kind of what we get to look forward to at the very beginning. And
yeah, yeah, exactly.
yeah, and then your mate Phil.
Yeah, well, I mean, Phil started so it was really interesting because the way that it was all situated, there was kind of like a row of obstacles, and it was kind of like two paths towards us. And the first thing Phil did, he went really, really early, and he jumped in and he threw this
It's like a wall
fire
of
stuff down.
flame.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
which he hasn't had been able to use before because so he's just got the 3 ticker in his perks that mean that we don't take damage if we walk on the fire. Which has been the big thing. I think he's been holding off a lot because he didn't want to throw this stuff down because he didn't want us to get in the way. Which it's understandable and appreciate that he's kind of been holding back. But I think now that it doesn't matter for us, he's just like, oh, I can just explode everywhere, which is cool. So it should be good. We should hopefully it'll open it up a bit for him, right? Like it'll let him be a bit freer with how he plays without having to worry about like, oh, if I put this here, this is going to get in the way, etc., etc.
true.
Uh, But yeah, so he threw that down, and what was cool was it was kind of like a tower defense. Like he put this down, and then it walled it off so that the monsters had to walk around, right?
That goes a
But then
long way around.
yeah, the long way around. But then you put one down on your turn, which meant that they walked through his.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. It was a really cool way of you guys accidentally working together, right? Because there was no communication. So just anyone who suggested that we should communicate more, please let us know our group. But it's it was really cool because as soon as you did that, they all had their turn and they just basically walked through the fire.
Yeah.
And what happened in subsequent turns was that you were able to push and pull things in and out of the fire. And I think we got a really, like, just got this snapshot of if you and Phil kind of coordinate a little bit, right, there could be so much pure damage coming out of just you guys. Like one person throwing things down, one person pushing and pulling. I think it could be really cool. So
Yeah.
it's
I'm
something I'm
starting to
looking
see
forward
it.
to.
I'm starting to see. I mean, it makes sense. We're both hazardous terrainy kind of, guys. He probably pumps a little bit more damage, at least from what I can see, with some larger hitting attacks and playing around with obstacles and all of that. When he's and he can place a lot more tokens than I can at fairly bigger ranges from what I can see, just from that wall of fire anyway. But if he's doing that, I don't really need to. So that was really and his doesn't hurt us, which is the
Mm.
main thing. So it just meant that yeah, we definitely need to probably communicate a little bit more. But that initial room when he laid that down and I blocked the other side, like you said, purely accidental, it controlled the room, and I think that's what those two are made to do is control. So it's like they're like control built characters, and we just mitigate basically the flow and tempo apart from the flying creatures of the room, whilst you go
Yeah.
in there and tank it up, etc. And Crain, I believe, took a 6, took a 3 hit, and it was really amusing. Then
It was like
I
one hit from the skeleton. It was just like, oh, as long as he doesn't take too much damage, crit. I was like, oh, good start.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, no, it was good first room actually. Good first room. We had Mark got his horde out and skeletons out, and that was doing work. Like it felt good, and we only had one ruined machine in that room.
Mm.
But yeah, I think he was the one that I was calling out and just saying, "I've got this. Just leave him alone. He's dead." And I did an attack that popped chilling impact, and I did an attack push bottom and top, and a attack pull bottom, and he went all the way through the hazardous terrain wall and then back, and he could have kept going, but he died halfway. And that's
Yeah.
when we had that weird rule thing where he died on the spot with another monster. And then we were typing in Discord about the rulings of it, and there was a lot of threads around it and all that kind of stuff. So it was cool that we had that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we may as well talk about that because in case it comes up for other people,
Yeah.
that we had a situation where essentially Deddy could pull this thing two more spaces, right? And he pulled it onto a space that had another monster, which is fine because it's a legal move as long as the next space it moves to is still closer to you and is empty. But then he asked, "Can I move it to this other space that is still closer to you, still within the rules of pull, but it doesn't have a valid space after that that contained another monster? So basically, can I pull it onto and stop on another monster?" Now, normally the rules say no because you can't, but because there was hazardous terrain there, it was going to take another 2 damage and die. And so we were kind of like, oh, I guess maybe because it's dying, but it's not really a legal pull. And you ended up finding a post on it. And what's really interesting is that, and essentially it said yes, you can because it's going to die. This came up in the Discord the other day, and someone else asked a very similar question. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, dwarf." We also have the same question. And he was like, "Oh, I don't know about that." And then there was an official post by Isaac, I think, from Gloomhaven. Maybe it
Mm,
was it's a Frosthaven one. But anyway, the point was that yeah, he clarified that yes, you can do it as long as it's going to die, then you can pull it to whatever square you want, as long as
yeah.
it's legal still. Like it still
Can't,
has to come
it
closer to
can't end
you.
the movement, the force movement in a occupied space
Yeah, it can't end there unless it's going to die.
unless it's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, again, that's really interesting to know because I think it's going to make a difference with you and Phil because
Mm,
there's going to be times where they're going to be multiple difficult terrains. So being able to pull them through even into spaces then just die is gonna be pretty cool.
yep. There is something about Something I also found really interesting about this is normally in scenarios that we do, there's a section, like there's usually a box that says somewhere, once X is achieved, read Y, right? In this, there were two sections, and one of them said, open the door. If you open the door, read this section. And the other one said, if there are three things on Crane's target, the debris, 3 damage worth at the start of some turn, read this other section. And I hadn't seen that before because when they worded like that, it's kind of like normally you just go for the next thing, but there were two options here. And it made me go, what's going to happen if he completes his before we open the door? Will it spawn
Mm,
more monsters? Will it cause a cave in? Like, that's what was going through my mind. But if we open the door and he's not done yet, is that also bad? Does that, I mean,
mm,
obviously more monsters are probably going to come in. I just thought that tiny thing was really interesting because I think he did end up completing his side before we opened the door. And when we read that section, it was like, cool, his new focus is this. If you haven't revealed it yet, well, that's his goal. He's heading towards it. In other words, he's heading towards the door. So that was the kind of bit where it was like, oh, okay, cool. Well, that answers that. But I just thought the unknown of going into it was really cool.
yeah. It's a cool way of creating suspense, right? And we've had this in a few scenarios where we've seen a letter tile on the map and not knowing what it does and going like, oh, okay, is that going to spawn something? I mean, usually yes. But what else is it going to be? And that was a cool way of doing that because going like, okay, d- there's two options: open the door or finish doing this. What's going to happen? And you're right, there are more things that could come up, like other negative events or positive events, right?
Yep.
So cool. And then so we finished that room pretty quickly. And other than it being like just full, like it was chockers, right? Like between the terrain, and all of the
You mean the first room,
summons.
the one that we're in?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. We couldn't wait to get out.
So you end up playing birds
I did.
because that's what you do best.
I did at the same time that we decided to open the door, which meant that Crane was going to fly into the next room, which was part of the
He
plan
was. He
until
was
we.
like, I've never moved this fast, boys. I knew I chose you guys for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he leapt in. But before he leapt in, I leapt in.
hmm
And when we opened it, it was basically like a big rock room, like big kind of cave room. And there were extra pillars that he needed to get to kind of around. So there was three more. And it was skeletons and robots, right?
Yeah.
Skeletons and robots just
There were
everywhere.
six skeletons and 6 robots.
Yeah. So lots.
Lots.
Yeah. Yeah. And why don't you tell us what happened
So
from your view?
when, in my view, you can basically end the podcast, like finish the rest of it yourself. I can go to bed now, because Gaz really, really came to party. So initial thoughts when that door opened and Crane bolted in, and you were the next one to go in. When you see all of the monsters spreading out around that room, it was 12, right? The first room had what, 5, maybe 6. There are 12 in this large room, and we're not even in the room yet. And Crane's heading in there first. My immediate response was, "Oh my god, we are in so much trouble." And the next thing I saw was there were no spitting drakes. So I was like, "Oh, well, that's a plus, right? Everything else is like gonna move in towards us." I We also had at that time a real log jam, right? We were bottlenecking as we do best outside in the first room because we had um, all the skeletons and the horde. We had my dog, we had Phil, and Crane was in there as well, and me. So it was kind of like, oh, how the hell are we all going to get our movement in there as birds is happening? It still wasn't quite enough, and Gaz, the almighty Gaz, decided to show us something we hadn't seen. It was a little bit of a callback to the Geminate, to be completely honest, because I believe the last time we were in the outpost phase, we crafted a potion. And what was the potion?
I think it's Major Fire Shield.
Uh
So
huh.
we managed to get our three herb alchemist. So we
Yeah,
started just funneling all of our remaining herbs into that to get as many potions as we could.
that's right. And we made the fire shield one, which then you took.
Yeah,
And from memory, it's like a retaliate 2 or 3.
I think it's three, two, three. Yeah, I think it's three. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, and range as well, right?
yeah. Range two. Yep,
Okay, something like that. Regardless, it's a
something. Yeah,
retaliate potion.
Yep.
Gaz went in there, and I know he played 2 burn cards. He'll have to explain which ones. And that was already like, what is he doing? He's burning 2 cards. 2 lost cards went in. 5 shield potion gets popped, and he just stood there. And then everything swarmed in, skeletons and everything to Gaz. I can't even tell you how amazing this looked, but everything was wailing into him. He was shielded up to hell, and everything around him was dying. The amount of damage, maybe not dying in that particular round, I think, but the amount of damage that went out from the retaliate was just absolutely insane. Like, ridiculous. And we just sort of stood there in disbelief as we're watching it happen. Because while this is happening, you have to activate 12 monsters. This one walks up and it hits Gaz for 2. Yep, cool. I block both of those, and it takes what, 4 or 5 damage? Like, it was taking, each one was taking something like 5. It was
Yeah, I think
easily,
it was 5. Yeah.
it was easily a 50 damage turn. Like, by the end of
Yeah.
it. It was something absolutely insane. And yeah, at that moment, I was just like, do I even want to go in there? Like, there's no point. It was kind of done. As scary as this room was, it was nearly single-handedly, no, I don't want to say dealt with and it was over and all that, but the amount of mitigation he did and damage he did to them because of this spiky shield retaliation bullshit, it was phenomenal. So maybe you should explain what exactly you used.
Yeah, so I had with the crab you have these tide cards, so they're kind of persistent cards that go up and give you things. So I had 2 up that gave me 1 shield each. One that gives me 1 shield, and one that gives me retaliate 2, and 1 shield in melee. Right, so that only works for melee things. So instantly, I already had 2 shield. I played another card, which was one of the burn cards, which is a big move card that gives me 1 shield and 1 retaliate. If I eat dark as well, all attacks have disadvantage, which it turns out I didn't need because I had. So going in with that, I ended up with 3 shields. And I don't think that I had. I think it was 3 shields. No, I think it was 4 shields because I also had my bottom. Yeah, it was 4 shields because I had my other card because I can play 3 cards when I've gotten a certain tide card out. So basically, it was like move in there, grant myself retaliate and shield, which is a burn. Also grant myself heal 1 and shield. So I had 4 shields at this point. And then the other one was I just thought I'd do a big AoE attack, and that was the mother burn card, which I probably didn't need to use. I could have done something else. But basically, that burner card chucked water over her and did a bunch of damage. So it was it was burning 2 cards, and it was kind of setting myself up. But with 4 shield, I took 0 damage from all the attacks. I think it was retaliate. I'm pretty sure it was retaliate 5 or 6. It was 2 from tide, at least 1 from the bottom cards. That's 3. So I think it would have been 5 or 6. And yeah, everything. You're right. Everything just melted. I was surprised how well it worked. I thought I was going to get pummeled. Like I was like, it's okay because I'll go in there and get absolutely wrecked. I was on pretty much full health as well. So it was with 4 shields, full health. I'm like, I should be okay. And then you guys will all come in and clean up, right?
Because
The bone
even
horde will
if you
come
get,
in.
even if you discard cards or whatever, you'll, even if you withstand it all and still stay alive, you've done that much work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And because I've got the crit helm as well, which means any crits turn into just +1s. Like, uh, with 4 shields, there really wasn't any chance of me taking like I couldn't take 10 damage, right? Because there was no brittle, there was no things like that. So it just worked out really well. And I think actually if I hadn't used the card that did the AoE and chucked water everywhere, I would have done more damage because I think there was a couple that couldn't get to me. Like they were hitting me, but then they were dying. And then there was some that couldn't get to me because they couldn't move through the water. So yeah, I think in a way I could have maximized and got some more damage out of it. But yeah, it felt really good. Like it felt really cool to stack all of those abilities up and just kind of I don't know have the perfect kind of storm of attacks. And I think from memory as well to make it even better, I'm pretty sure the skeletons were hitting for like 1 and 2, so they were doing
They were
real
hitting,
baby attacks.
yeah. They
So
were doing little ones. I mean, I'm trying to work out whether or not they have another attack because they target multiple things, right? And there was only you there. But if they were starting next to you and hit all the one person with all of the attacks, would that have been bad or good?
oh, it would have been great. They would all just insta killed themselves, right?
It
Like
depends on how hard the hit is. I can't remember how hard
4 shields. I was
that one
never
is.
going to take that much, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. So, But yeah, that always felt really cool. Now, I guess the thing is to play that all out. I pretty much did nothing for about the next 2 or 3 turns, and that wasn't really because I'd spent all my cards, but it was more that after we killed them or dealt with most of them, Crane finished his digging, and that meant that in one of the corners there was going to be 2 robots spawning every turn. So by that stage, you and Mark had gotten in there, and you guys kind of went over that way to handle that, which was pretty much handled because you could kill those.
Kind of. It was a bit messy.
Kind of.
So I had a dog over there. I had my fox over there. Phil was trying to get in. We had the horde over there. Mark was over there, and I started spitting up hazardous terrain everywhere. That was my. I peed on it. That was my area, right? And Mark was getting shitty because he didn't want to cross into it to the point where he just went fuck it, and he just sent his horde through the hazardous terrain so he could get into a better position. Otherwise, that thing was going to move all the way back around. Don't forget, also, you had flooded the middle of the board,
Yeah, well,
right?
that was part of the problem, right?
Yes. So we had terrain everywhere. We had in the middle of it, we had hazardous terrain, difficult terrain. My difficult terrain, and then a little bit later, it was like some kind of flag with the amount of terrain that was absolutely everywhere later on to deal with. But then, yes, you're right. We were in the corner trying to deal with the room machines that were spawning every single round. As Crane was making his way and clearing the debris, more things were happening. Actually, funny enough, this spawn point that we're heading towards, it wasn't on the board when I was setting it up because I forgot it. So it was later on, it was like spawn them at D or something. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know where D is. Oh, I forgot to put the letter down. And everyone was like, oh, quick, run over there. So we had to go all the way over there
Mm.
and deal with those. And we were starting to throw hazardous terrain down. Phil blocked off one corner of it with his obstacle creation. Again, it's the funnel, right? The amount of crap we had on the ground was causing things to go where we wanted them to go.
Mm.
Now, that's good until you're actually having to make that choice when you're doing the monster movement and finding a focus and then working on that. That's a little bit more like we don't really think too much about that. We're just like, how cool is this? We can control where they
Mm.
go. We're going to really control them, but now we have to activate them and work out where they're supposed to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, but it did. It kind of became a next phase of the scenario, right? Like we kind of came in, we did see all those things. They did get mulched pretty well and cleaned up, which was awesome. Heaps of loot, like so much loot,
For
which
you,
again, oh, I got heaps of it, but I'm pretty sure Mark got a chunk because he ended up getting the chest.
Mark,
I'm pretty
Mark
sure.
had a few burgers on our side actually from
Mm.
the ruin machines that kept dropping. You had your retaliate thing because everything was just you were just standing there and everything was dying around you and dropping loot everywhere. And then you just
Yeah, I was
loot
just like
one.
loot one.
Yes.
So yeah, that was pretty cool. And yeah, no, it all worked out pretty well. I think the one of the calls of the night was in so we had one token on the board in that last room, which was we were like, okay, pretty sure things are going to spawn from there once we
Mm.
get in, and that's when it came up, and the one that we didn't have on the board, that's where they came from. But Phil had exploded magma on one of the around one of the tokens. He's like, that way things are going to come in and they're going to have to walk through it. I was like, that's brilliant. And then he's like, what should be drakes, right? What
Mm.
should spawn drakes? And I was like, yeah, you're right. It will be just to annoy you. And then when the token came out that we didn't have on and it was robots, we're like, oh, it's robots. Oh, this is 100% going to be drakes.
Mhm.
Anyway, as Crane gets to the last pile, once he finishes the second last, it's like, oh, great, now spawn spitting drakes from this point. And we're like, of course. Like,
Yeah.
it was perfectly lined up. And I'd even sat down the bottom where there was going to be 2 difficult terrain spaces and me, and they had to go that way to get to me, right? And it was going to be perfect. It was like a bottleneck, me standing there tanking. We could throw heaps of stuff at them, and they would have just had to keep walking onto the fire. But no, they were spitting drakes. They just did whatever they wanted.
Yeah. And the I was gonna say no, I've lost it. But it was regarding the spitting drakes. The ruin machines. They stopped spawning, and that was one thing we were worried about was whether or not they're both going to keep spawning because it was getting towards
Mm.
the end, and it was like, oh, this is going to be the last hitch. Hold the door, right? Hold the door on both sides. But thank goodness the ruin machine stopped spawning, and then we just, we all shuffle over and head over to where you are to then deal with the drakes, which I mean they're annoying, and that's the part where I start putting my arms up in the air, like I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Um, I can actually pick up the hazardous terrain and throw it into them like a pizza, but that's about it.
Mm.
And then
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I mean, I think those last 2 or 3 turns was mostly just what cards can we burn to get XP? Like
that's
it
what it became.
because they were never going to get to Crain and kill him, and that was the only lose condition, right? Like he had to dig the last thing 4 times, but by that stage he was well clear, and it they would have had to kill through all of us to get to him, and that just wasn't going to happen. So
I think there was a second birds in there as well to help him get from one to the other. So this is another scenario where birds really made it shortened the game.
yeah,
Not
bias to victory.
dramatically because he's once he's at the spot he stays there for a while, but it definitely saves us like 2 rounds.
Mm. So yeah, and so that was it. I think in the end, like I had a great time because I got to do something really cool. I don't know about everyone else. Like, how did you find it?
I liked it. I really, really liked it, actually. I think it was really, really cool. It was really cool to, and this is something that I'm starting to notice is some of these later scenarios we had, I kind of picture it what it would be like. Now, I want to say what it would be like with the Geminate and the Drifter and some of our original classes, but you were doing that anyway on the Geminate, right? Although it was hurting you a lot more from memory. Um, but yeah, no, it's interesting to sort of see how, we would do it back then if we were doing it then.
Mm.
But no, I really enjoyed this scenario. I like the puzzles that I'm getting now with Phil, and I'm getting a little greedy now with some of my positioning to the point where, I mean, one of the parts I actually failed my battle goal because of it, but I got greedy. I like getting next to something so I can push it as far as I can and pull it as far as I can into as much crap as I can to the point where it ends its turn next to me, and then punches me in the face. And if it's a ruined machine, it happened to also be the same card that caused it to explode. Punch, trap damage, dog's dead. And I'm like, yep, cool. I probably could have done that better, but the stars were kind of aligning for me to, throw that damage out there. So, confidence is building. I'm feeling honestly way less healing, right? There's way less active, I heal this person, cool, that's my turn, I heal this person, because a lot of the heals are at the top. Which is good, other than the times where I know I need to throw out a clutch ward, or pad my meters with regen on Crain at the very beginning when he copped 6 damage, and Gaz is like, "Hey, Daddy, can you just throw a regen on him?" I'm like, "Oh my god, yes," because he's not getting hit again anytime
Yeah,
soon.
yeah. So
But
yeah,
yeah,
no, that you're right, and I think we saw both. Yeah, even without the communication, you and Phil work quite well together. I think some of my water got in the way,
yep,
but I'm really keen to see what you guys can do. Kind of seeing now what you can do. It's almost like okay, like
it's coming
these are some of the
together.
things. Yeah, so I think it was good, and in the last couple of scenarios, kind of Phil's magma placing kind of pieces have kind of gotten in the way a little bit, and it's been really tricky because there've been scenarios where it's a really kind of small area that we had to go through. So not only were they there, they were getting in the way. He didn't have that perk yet, so we're taking damage. I kind of feel like A, he was holding back, but B, when he did, it was like, oh, did you have to put it there? Which is the reason I haven't been putting water down, because I've been like, I don't want it just to get in people's way.
Mm,
Now that we don't take damage, we got to see a couple more of his skills, and I reckon that he's going to be able to lean into more. So I'm really kind of keen to see, because I think he did really well with the ones that he placed. Because that one in the first room was amazing. It did so much damage
amazing.
with your pushing and pulling. And honestly, if it hadn't been like spitting drakes, like that would have been another great one in that bottom. So that combined with his ability to just destroy obstacles, which really opens up some of those rooms, I think he's going to be really good.
Very good. I think that's something we don't think too much about is the obstacle removal because we haven't had anything that can either move them or anything like that. I think Craighart was one of the original ones in Gloomhaven
Mm,
that could move obstacles. So the fact that we've dealt with obstacles this whole time and haven't had any way to deal with them, knowing that, I mean, we saw that 2 scenarios ago with the forest imps. He was blowing up the giant tree in the middle, right? Things like that. It's very effective, and it's got me thinking now. Yes, we are 3 characters that are placing overlay tiles on the board, but we don't all necessarily need to be placing the overlay tiles. I know for a fact that mine are the least important, which means I only put them down if I absolutely feel I have to, or Phil's not going to put them anywhere near me. We're going to use like his are limited by how many he can put down. He can replace them by placing new ones, but his don't hurt us. So it's almost like
mm,
the priority system is get his out, right, and go with your water, right. If it's amazing the amount of different TD kind of things we can do with our lineup right now, which is very cool. Which was why I was asking you earlier. is it time to bump up the difficulty?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, Daddy was asking me earlier. He's like, you know what? We are pretty awesome. I feel like this game's too easy, and I look. I really don't think that it's worth us playing anymore because like we're just cruising through this.
Oh, okay. Is
So
this what I
I
do to
asked
you?
why he's jinxing us, putting a massive mox on us. But yeah, look, it would be. I'm keen to give it a crack. Bump up the difficulty by one. I think some of the recent scenarios we've gotten have been a lot simpler and
Mm,
but then I think we talked about it, right? It's like, well, maybe they've been simple because we've been finding really good solutions to the puzzles, which is kind of it's what we talked about is so good in this game and what some of the really I won't say complex, but some of the scenarios that had a lot of rules of you must do this at this stage or this is going to happen, they took that away. Whereas
mm,
these ones have been more kind of get through these, do these, kind of tasks. Um, but you really do get to use all your puzzle pieces, and we have a lot of puzzle pieces now,
yeah,
right? Far more than when it was, yeah, like you said, Drifter, Geminate, Bone Shaper, and the Deathwalker, where it was really just mostly damage,
yeah.
right? We've got so many puzzle pieces now, so yeah, maybe it is worth bumping it up to one more. Like, what extra do we get if we bump it up?
Well, our hazardous terrain now does 3 damage instead of 2. We get a
Oh,
little
so
extra
this is
money.
why you
Hang
want to
on,
bump it
hang on.
up.
No, 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 no,
Okay,
no,
I
no, no,
see
no.
now. Yeah,
Hang
do you
on,
want to make it harder? It means I do more damage.
hang on. A little bit more money, more XP, right? And then maybe we get more scenarios that come down to the wire instead of being a stomp fest because we've got
Hmm.
now. Look, the other thing is you did have a massive turn against 12 things with the retaliate, right? So there's that. If we didn't have that, it may be slightly different. I don't think it was going to be necessarily that much harder, but it could have been more interesting. We are very close to losing the zombie horde.
Yep.
So that could also be one of the reasons why we're like, oh, this is easy. Oh
Yeah.
no. Hey, get the big guy. Ah, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, look, I think while we've got the Bone Shaper for I think one more scenario, it's probably worth just trying to bump it up and see how much of a difference it makes, or at least just have a look at the monsters and see what difference it makes to them. If it looks ridiculous, because should have a pretty good gauge of whether it's gonna be really hard or just like slightly harder.
mm,
It does mean though that the people that are getting themselves into positions they shouldn't and they're getting hit for a lot need to do that like not at all
mm,
because everything doing an extra damage or two per hit, it's gonna put us in positions where people are burning cards too early or for wrong reasons. And I think that when you put the difficulty up, you need to work better together. It becomes
mm.
more co-op than it does just do something cool every round.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So yeah. Cool. Anything else on the scenario? I think that's probably much my thoughts. I thought it was pretty
Um,
cool. It
no,
had some cool monsters.
very cool scenario. I actually like the monsters in that one. It wasn't too overbearing. I think Ruined Machines literally have only had one scenario, which is when we met them that they've been a problem.
Mm.
We really haven't had too many problems with them, even though they've been in quite a few scenarios, especially in this line. But yeah, no, other than that, I think this was a nice, fun scenario with a cool little gimmick with it with Crain. And I like these scenarios that are introducing or bringing some of the characters with us. It brings some life into the world and has a nice little thematic touch as well. So I like the fact that, we get to run around with some of the dickheads that we're meeting along the way when they're getting their asses kicked and then going, help us. Oh, I'm going to run off into another room now.
Yep. Yep. Nah, I feel the same. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to more robot missions eventually.
Mm.
So, cool. So we got back to Frosthaven, and we didn't have. It was the first week of summer, but we didn't have anything to read. I don't believe we didn't have any calendar events.
We did.
Did we?
Um,
We did have one. That's
we
right.
did.
I
It's
did
the
not
reason
remember at
why
all.
we're gonna retire our Bone Shaper.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. It was the Bone Shapers. Hey, I finally finished doing whatever it is that you wanted me to do to the thing that you found in the forest.
I think his house got messed up, or his little cottage or wherever it was. Bandits or something came in and ruffled through his stuff, and he was really upset. And I think they took something important that we had to go and get because we got the
Okay.
sacred soil. We brought it back to
Mm.
him, and then I just remember the Fortella voice reading, and the guy was like really devastated about something, and we had to go and
Oh.
Yep, cool.
Maybe I was not paying attention for some
That's fair.
reason.
Yeah, but
So
either
yeah,
way,
cool.
yeah, we unlocked Mark's, I believe, final scenario.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So that's what we'll be doing next week, and that'll be his last one. And but then our outpost event, I believe, was something to do with the barracks
It was.
again.
Spoiler alert.
Hmm?
I mean, spoiler alert.
Well, something to do with the barracks. It's pretty vague.
I don't know. That one I'm not too sure. I guess that might be okay.
Well, we won't talk any more about it, but basically it was something to do with there was an event in the barracks dealing with the captain of the guard, I think it was, and someone else.
Mm.
And again, the heroes had to come to the rescue. So
Mhm.
it wasn't a fight though; it wasn't an attack. So we didn't have to
Because
do
we're
anything
in
there.
summer,
We
and
are
they
in
don't
summer.
fight us in summer.
Well, apparently, except for
Well,
sometimes when they do.
except, well, we'll see.
But yeah. So it was a very easy one because I think the decision was pretty straightforward. So
Very, very straightforward.
we'll talk about that more in the raw because I think we've got a few things to say about the our how lucky we've been with some of these. But
Mhm.
yeah, other than that, I think the outpost was pretty.
It was fairly chill.
Yeah, because I didn't level up.
No, neither did I.
I think we might have done a little bit more crafting or brewing. I mean, what did we build? I think we just upgraded the
We
hide.
upgraded
The
one of
hide
them.
thing.
It was the only
Yeah,
one we hadn't done yet,
yeah. So now we've got.
which is good because it always gives us prosperity, and more ways to blow our money.
Yeah, although no, actually we didn't do that. We upgraded the crafting thing, I think.
No, we did that last week.
Oh, that was last week. Okay, cool. I don't know then.
Yeah, you
So,
haven't been paying
yeah.
attention for a week.
No, apparently I've just been spacing out. I don't know. So, cool. So that's basically what we covered. That was the session on Monday, and we battle goals.
Mhm.
So I guess we'll go through battle goals,
Mhm.
and we'll go through DBS. So, um, battle goals was an interesting one, and I'll talk about my experience with battle goals. But Deddy, I believe you had the never let your health drop below half,
Mhm.
and you did that really well until you didn't,
Mhm. Yep.
and that was
So
when you chose to be a hero.
that's I wasn't even trying to be a hero. I was just trying to get my numbers up, and I had the dog out and everything. And that's what upsets me the most is that trying to keep my dog alive. It's got an innate ability, a passive that helps to keep it alive, and I keep getting it killed because of the ruin machine. And I thought I was not going to be in range, and I thought it was going to hit Mark and me, Mark's horde and me, and it ended up walking forward and hitting me because I went earlier to do my push pull shenanigans, and it didn't hit me. It hit my dog. Sorry, it didn't hit my dog. It hit me, but in hitting me caused it to explode, which then affected my dog. Now, this is also the most awkward thing. Not only did I fail my battle goal right then and there, but when I took, I think it was like a 3 or 5 damage attack or whatever, plus the trap damage, I then had to discard card to negate it, but I didn't have any left, so I had to discard 2 cards out of my discard pile, and that
That's right.
hurts. That really, really, really hurts. So, yep, that's my story about how I really, really failed my battle goal.
Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, and I do remember that actually. You're like, oh yeah, cool. I have to discard, and it was like, oh, you have to discard. So what? And you're like, yeah, I guess which 2 cards don't I want? I was
Well,
like,
I
oh,
reached over to where my hand normally is on the table
yeah,
to go, which one do I get rid of? And there was nothing there, and I've gone,
man,
oh, this is way worse.
yeah,
Like, I really wish I thought this through.
yep, yep. So Phil had kill 3 or fewer enemies, which I believe he accomplished.
He did.
Yep. I feel like if it was uh be part of 3 or fewer enemies dying, he wouldn't have done it because I think he pretty much, if you had tranked kills, deaths, and assists, right, like you do in your MOBAs, I reckon his assists would have been through the roof because it pretty much, I think everything in the first room pretty much got hit by him, and
Well,
then a decent chunk of the other stuff got hit by him in the second room, other than things killing themselves on me.
this is why battle goal questions get asked all the time in all the different forums and all of that because, like, for that exact battle goal, is like people are gonna say, does the hazardous terrain that I am placing down give me kill credit, right? Or is it my damage? But it's not because it's not an
No,
active ability you're doing. But that's what I mean. That's going to cause
but
those questions because people are going to be like, oh, but that's actually my lava, right? I'm the only one that can do that.
I guarantee 80% of the questions about whether your lava, for example, or your traps or your hazardous terrain or whatever it is, because I'm sure that there's many, many versions of this through the different classes. I guarantee that 80% of those questions, even 95% of the questions, will be switching sides depending on whether they want to be able to achieve the battle goal, right?
or not.
If they're not supposed to be killing things, it'll be like, well, that doesn't count as mine because I didn't put it on the ground. If it's get credit for killing things, it'll be like, but I put it on the ground. It's totally worth it,
Yeah,
right?
but didn't you have a
So
question about battle goals and kill credit?
I think two scenarios ago, I had the don't kill anything one, right? And oh, it might have even been last week. And I looked at this and went, that's a bit rough. Like I can't not kill anything. That just it's a two ticker, and I was like, I can't pick that because we need to kill stuff. I don't want to, either A, be in a position where I have to book the scenario, or kind of just be inefficient, like and go
Mm,
through and go, oh, I can't attack things. So I was like, okay. But then this week I looked at it and went, I might be able to do this one, right? Like I'll give it a crack. And what I'll do is I will just go really defensive. I know that a lot of my attacks, I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I mostly draw like my average damage is 1.8, right? On an
mm.
attack. And
On an attack,
considering
yes.
on an attack, yeah, considering most of my attacks are like 2, right? That's bad. That means I'm doing below like base damage, right? So I was like, I could probably do this. I'll check my retaliate up. I'll do a little bit of retaliate. That's fine. There was a monster that I hit for too much and then it retaliated on me and I killed him in the first room. I was like, oh, fine, whatever. I guess that was stupid of me to try and do this one anyway. I then proceeded to, and I mean, I would have still done this even if I hadn't killed that one in the first room because it just seemed like such a good move,
Mm,
right? But I think I showed you my battle goal about after the second turn of retaliating everything to death. I
mhm.
showed you my battle goal that said, "Do not kill an enemy." It's like,
Yeah,
I don't think I did this one. I think I killed everything.
I'm
So
pretty sure the question was, retaliate doesn't count as killing a thing, right?
well, that's it. If retaliate doesn't count, then I 100% did it. So I'd love for Dwarf when he hears this to just come through with a overruling, clarifying, because I can easily just add 2 more ticks onto my sheet, easily,
The first
easily.
time you failed, it was on a skeleton. You literally walked up, you planned it. You were going to hit it, walk up, hit it for little because you do little damage, and then it was going to hit you and it was still going to be alive. And you hit it with a one attack or whatever, and you pulled your +2, which made you do more damage than you anticipated. Then it turned and hit you and then died. And that's when you
Hmm.
were like, oh no, does
Yeah,
that count?
yeah. I was like, this is no good. It's dead. I'm like, I can't do anything to stop that either. Like, it just killed itself as soon as it hit me. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I did not do mine, which is unfortunate because I need 2 more ticks because I need. There's no point in me taking my water really until I have my 3 tick perk, which is basically gain advantage if I'm standing in water or if I'm hitting something that's in water, I gain advantage, right?
Mm,
Amazing if there's water. I feel like I should be able to balance this even with you and Phil throwing some crap everywhere and just do 1 or 2 water tiles. Because there's a few cards I can change around where I can put a water tile down. I can actually move it around.
mm.
So I might be able to just get away with 1 or 2 water tiles and just kind of shift it to where I need to go. Or even better, do what I did last time, throw it into the room, right? And then just park on it and just
Yeah.
sit there and just let
Yeah.
everything come to me and have advantage. So there's probably some things I can do, but there's no point really in getting it until I've got that because it makes it more powerful. So I
Makes
need
sense.
ticks.
Yeah.
Um, and then last was Mark. So who cares? He's level 9. He's max perks. He's max XP. I don't know what his was.
But
And
he's still taking them and trying to finish them because in our variant, if he completes it, he goes out of the pool.
that's
So he's
right.
trying to get rid of the crap ones.
That's right. So yeah. So I'm sorry, Mark. I can't remember what you had, and we didn't bother looking it up. So
Yeah.
yep. Damage meters. So this was a really interesting one. So damage meters we had, well, because this is one of the ones the first time with crab that I've gone quite large, right?
Mm.
And there was like I think it was Phil writing this down. It was 5, 5, 5, 5 every time I got hit. I think it was about 35 damage in one round, where
Yep.
that's just everything bashing into me. And so anyway, on damage we had, and I'll go from bottom to top. So I had Phil on 33. Which is a bit low for him. I think he was a bit disappointed in that, but I think that that's the kind of numbers he might get when he's going more I'm gonna control stuff, and then you and him move things around, rather than him just purely going for I just want to hit things really hard. So I don't think it's representative of how much he did, but yeah, it was probably, especially compared to his Death Walker. He's probably not 33. How do I only do 33?
33, but that's what I do in one swing.
Yeah, that's it. That was pretty much right. So, and then we had Deddy on 49. So again, turning that support into a carry. So good job. And then we had me on 83, which again I was quite chuffed with, because as we've pointed out, I only hit for about 1.8 per attack.
Yeah.
And so to pump that right up, I was pretty happy. And then we had Mark on 104, because when you are just driving a Mack truck at everything that's made of spikes and fire,
Yeah.
it's really easy to do heaps of damage.
And I think after last week, I think he's a bit disappointed with that number.
Yeah.
I think you kind of, took a lot of that from him because, and like it was a group effort because the hazardous terrain and the difficult terrain and all that really stopped that horde from getting out of control. We really reined it in a bit. So,
Yep. So 104, just, disappointing 104.
mhm.
So, and then for damage taken, I believe, and this is me working through. So, we had Deddy on 17, so actually took the least amount of damage and still managed to fail his battle goal. So
Yep.
nice work.
Good.
Phil there on 33, which is heaps. Phil, you need to get hit less.
It was the first room because
Yeah.
he moved forward to place the firewall, which then got him stunned and then got him. Yeah. But, it was worth.
It was tricky as well, because in that first room it was skeletons. So even with moving into different places, we couldn't pull the aggro because it was so tight. They were just going to go up and hit him anyway. So
Yeah.
that became a bit tricky.
Multi-target.
I don't think he took much damage after that first room. I think you're right. So, and then we had a Mark on 43 and me on 64. So yeah, it was, and at 64 and 34 of that was mitigated. So I think that's where the tanking kind of came into play.
Mm-hmm.
And then healing, we had Phil on 4, me on 9, Mark on 23, which is ridiculous. But I suppose every time he attacks anything, he draws 2 heal himself cards, right?
So, yeah, I want to talk about that for 2 seconds. So apparently, and I asked you this, they've got perks in there, and they've got 3 perks or 2 perks, and each one gives 2 or 3 of these plus heals.
each one gives 3.
How many does he have?
2.
Okay, so there should be
there's
6 of these in there.
Yep.
Why am I seeing 12 per pull almost?
It's like 120% chance to pull one, right?
He just pulls every single time he goes to attack. You're right. It's a heal, and because it's a rolling modifier, then plus whatever. And he's just doing that. He's got the boots, some healing boots. When he goes late, he tops himself up, and then occasionally, he's pumping out big heals on his horde. I barely had to heal him that time. He kind of took care of himself. So look, he can do it, and I'm impressed.
And then you on 29, which again is really good considering you didn't focus on healing, but then probably about 20 of that was on Crain. So it's like, I don't know, whichever way you want to land on that. So
Definitely.
it was no, it was quite good. So no, look, again, I think a good contribution. I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, is that we have a little bit of a different group now. We don't really have a main DPS. We, obviously I can tank a little bit, but I think between you and Phil, it's going to be a lot more control-y. And now Mark's got his Bone Horde. That's kind of our main DPS, right? That's just I'll build this thing up to be max level, and then it's just going to go hit everything for like 9 each time. But yeah, I think things will change in after next week if Mark does retire. Yeah, it's going to get a lot more interesting. So
With our lineup, I think our biggest weakness is going to be the imps, ranged flying, essentially.
Yep.
Because you want things right in front of your face. You do so much damage with just your standard retaliate too. Like that just adds up. And then of course without the hazardous, like I'm not doing much in terms of like DD, like direct damage. And then like Phil is. But still, we would prefer things on the ground. So it's probably
good
the
point,
worst
actually. Yeah,
combination.
imps are going to be shit for us, aren't they? Because yeah, you and Phil won't be able to do your stuff, and they're not going to take damage from my retaliate.
They were
so-
already shit 2 scenarios ago in the forest, the Sacred Soil one. That was bad. But it's when there's hordes of them and that was one of those scenarios where there were hordes of them. The one that
Mm.
we did last week with the ball in my 65, the
Oh
icy
yeah, with the
slipping
snow
one,
imps.
there was
Yep.
like only a couple of snow imps. There
Mm.
were just like a couple here and there, but it's the ones when they're hoarding. The ones I think they're the ones we're going to struggle with, especially.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Because we can burn them down pretty quickly when we're actually attacking them. But you're right, like when we're trying to use our other abilities, like the difficult terrain or my retaliate, and they don't hit them, then yeah, they don't. So yeah, cool. Anything else to wrap up that? Have I forgotten anything?
no,
Being new at this, no,
no,
all good.
that's perfect.
Tick of approval.
Yep.
Excellent, excellent, cool. So the last thing I wanted
Oh
to
no,
talk
no,
about.
no. Sorry,
Oh, here
sorry
we
to throw
go.
this out there. Ormy.
Oh, Ormy, Ormy. Oh, yeah, I forgot about all our subplots.
Mm,
So Ormy. Look, considering there's already one dude that was like pretty keen to just jump into it, it wouldn't have been terrible, but it was pretty clustered, and I feel like he very easily could have got himself into a position where he gets hit by lots of stuff. Like anything with skeletons is always tricky because he's just going to keep barreling forward, and they're going to try and probably hit him as well. So not great,
I
but
would
not
have to spend
terrible.
more time pulling an ally, and getting him back, or granting him movement and making him walk the other way and go, no, 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 back here, Gaz, couple of puddles here, please, like and making him TD his way there.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
But I don't
That's
want to have to
true.
waste time doing that. So yeah, I think he would get in the
Mm.
way. It's not as catastrophic as some other ones, but yeah, it would definitely add a extra layer of difficulty to this one.
Yep, yep. On our Phil Misswatch, he didn't miss,
Mm,
but I think he was back to his drawing best or his modifier best. He
yeah,
picking greens. He had a little bit of a giggle when he pulled that purple one. So I think he was happy with his draws a lot
yeah,
more.
yeah.
And I don't think I missed. No, no, my crit was at the very my miss was at the very bottom, and I think my crit was on below it, or maybe that was later. But yeah, I don't think I missed. I just drew heaps of crap.
Yeah.
So
No, it's fine.
that was it. Cool. All right. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, and just have a little bit of a chat because I know we're going to explore these in more detail. We've got some videos and stuff that are going to go up, but I wanted to have a chat and get your feeling on the solo scenarios.
Yep.
So far, Phil tried the solo scenario on his Death Walker, gave it a few cracks, and I think he was about level 7 or 8. I know he wasn't 9 because I think we talked about this on Monday. Mark also around the same time had a couple of goes at his,
Yeah,
and I
he would have
think
been maybe 6.
yeah,
I
he
think when he
definitely didn't have his
tried.
bone hoard.
No,
So it was around then. You had a go at yours or a few goes at yours the other week, and you were what 5 or 6?
I was 5.
Yeah, okay, 5 or 6. Yeah, 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm now 5,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe I'm 6.
I think
And
you're
I
5.
tried mine on Monday.
Yes.
So we basically finished this scenario with about 2 hours kind of left before it was late. And I was like, oh, hey, let's do another scenario. Jokes, jokes. And then I was like, maybe I'll do my solo because I haven't tried it. And I was like, how quick's it going to be? And mine actually ended up being really quick, right? Because it was, one room. It's basically like a tournament, right?
Yeah.
I think theme wise, and I want to talk more about this about how you feel about yours and the others because you've seen them. But I thought mine was really cool. Like it felt really cool. I was like Sebastian under the sea, representing the Little Mermaid and the Little Mermaid Kingdom, and going around to kick these other crabs' butt. And it was cool. And I'm looking forward to having another crack at it now. I kind of know a little bit more. And I did pretty well, although I still think, even though I got to the third and last boss, I still think he very much just destroyed me. But yeah, that was that. So going right back to it, theme. First of all, how do you feel about the theme of the? You've seen all 4 now,
Yep.
right? How do you feel
Yep.
about it?
Um, yours one's definitely the strongest in my memory, because yours had a very strong theme about it. It was very cool. It was this whole, oh, you're a land walker now. You've been up there with everyone else. You don't deserve to be a part of us. UFC, Ultimate Fighting Crabs. Like, it was cool that we'd set up the octagon and in you went, and you like to think that these other crabs were also fighting in separate rings at the same time, but apparently not. They're just in the locker room waiting to come out and each time you're more battered and bruised, the next one comes out and is acting all high and mighty and tough. It's not really fair, but I'm not a crab, so I don't know how crabs do this. Theme wise, it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the taunting that they were doing every time we read out the next section when the next combatant was coming in. I like the fact that you had the time to prep. The way that they build these things around the way the classes work is very cool. Theme wise, mine I don't really remember what the theme was. Um, the story to me, look, when I read narrative, it's either going to grip me or it's not. And I would say a good 80% of the time it's not going to. And it's just my brain just loses focus very, very quickly. Which is why sometimes I've struggled to explain what we're up to in Frosthaven from a story point of view. So mine, yeah, I don't really remember what my theme was, but I think the solo scenarios in general are very cool because of the way it's tied into the character. Mark's was like a crematorium necromancy kind of thing as it would be, and it was like 3 main rooms into some sort of indoor crypt, and you got to kill a named guy. So his was kind of cool. I'm sure there was some spooky story around that one there. And Phil's, I honestly probably, I think his was like a soul wasteland or something,
Okay.
something Deathwalkery,
Yeah, that
and
sounds about right.
yeah, and just all of them. There was nothing similar about any of them. It was very
Mm.
cool. Mark had this gauntlet. Mark literally had a gauntlet to a boss. You've had boss. I had this thing where I actually had to move neutral pieces to because of my push and pull. I had to get them onto
Mm.
certain spots to then charge up my attack abilities whilst dealing with, a whole bunch of wind and ice guys who are pushing and pulling stuff. But yes, the themes of the solo scenarios are perfect.
Yeah.
Really, really enjoying it.
I think it's hilarious that out of all of them, you were talking about like, mine being a boss fight, Mark's being a gauntlet, and yours is a puzzle. It's like the person who doesn't want puzzles.
Look,
So,
it's not too bad. It's not too bad. There's definitely a lot of monster variety there, and I can't wait to do mine again. I've got
yeah.
another card now that I think will make a big difference.
Well, that's a good segue actually into the next point I wanted to discuss was because I know you mentioned that you're like, oh, I've got this card now that I got at like level 5 or 6 or whatever. I think it might have been 6 you got, and I think it's going to make a big difference because it can hit multiple targets and blah blah blah. Do you think that for like what you need to get them done? Because so far we've had all 4 of us had a crack and no one's completed theirs, right? Are they too hard? Okay, and now just to caveat that, too hard based on the fact that you get an item, right? So the reward, but you kind of want to get that before you level 9.
I think that's the risk reward though, or sorry, I think that's otherwise it just becomes you get an item and you get an item because everyone's gonna get it so like easily. I think that's done intentionally to be like, let's see how well you know your character. And I think that I do agree with one thing, and that is some of it is very RNG dependent. Some look, Phil was talking to me about that on my one where like there was just BS how you could set everything up and then one of them can play one of their early cards and just move all your pieces away while blowing you up or something like that. It could be a get good kind of thing. But
Mm,
yeah, I like to think that they can be done at level 5, and I guarantee there's going to be people out there saying, yeah, get good, right? I did mine at level 5, etc. Um, but yeah, it does like Mark's looked at his now and gone, I'd like to go back and do it, but I don't think it's worth because I don't really care about the item anymore.
yeah. Well, that's what I kind of feel like. It's a cool little extra like bonus content. So just from a make the game have more stuff in it, it's cool if people do it. And you do get an item. And looking at some of the items, I think when we had a look through for our original team, they ranged from like okay to pretty good. So I think most of them were like, oh yeah, I could definitely see and see a use for that. And I know the Geminates particularly was really flavorful. I think it was like every time you shift, it shifted too and did a different thing, or every time you used it, it changed. I can't remember 100%, but I remember reading, going, that seems really cool, like a cool extra piece again to the big puzzle that was the Geminate. So I just wonder, like, I know they recommend that you don't do them until 5, but I feel like around 5 or 6, they should be doable. And again, you're right. People are probably going to message us in and go like, "Oh, we'll get good noobs. Like they're super easy to do." But I mean, based on the fact that all four of us have had a crack, I've only done mine once, but I think if I'd gone again, I'm not going to accomplish it because it wasn't not knowing as much as like kind of, I don't know, not having the power level maybe to get through it quite. Although there are a few things I know I would do differently. So yeah, I'm just wondering if like offering an item is that's cool is the right reward for you doing a thing that you probably can't do till you're really high.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I've read I've read some discussions around it where people have just gone in and they've said, "Yeah, it took me 8 goes, but I got it." Right? We don't have that kind of luxury, I guess, because I do, but I'm not
Mm,
going to. I only did it while Phil was there watching me because he's going to point out something that I'm doing wrong, right? We catch each other out with these things.
yeah.
When it comes to the tiniest thing from a monster movement or something. So it just makes me feel like I'm doing it the most legit. Um, but yeah, I think it's just I think if I kept going, like Mark was starting to get it. One thing I learned from it is I understood my character a lot more from doing it, and it was
Mm,
just from the conversations I was having with Phil about why. Why is this so difficult, etc. And then explaining to him, and he's like, "Oh, just can't you just do more attacks?" And I'm like, "I don't have enough attacks." And then I looked at my cards, and I was like, "Okay, here's my attack, here's my," and I actually, for the first time, broke down my cards, and
yeah.
I then realized most of my attacks are at the top, most of my pushes and pulls are up the top. Most of my heals are up the top. My wards up the top. My pets are up the top. Oh, my top is really important. So that's when I was talking to you guys, and I was like, I've just learnt this because I've done this breakthrough here that if you guys need a heal and it's my top heal, I'm not doing very much else the rest of the round, like
Yeah.
that particular round. But yeah, it was because of that that it taught it to me. So I think, yeah, you will learn more from maybe just hard pushing it, even at a
Yeah.
lower
Okay.
level. But then, of course, there's
Yeah.
the next question is the loot situation, because
So
that's questionable, right?
yeah, this is kind of my problem with what happened when I did mine. So and look, maybe again, mine is unique in that how it works. So, for those that have done any of the lurker chain quests, you'll have encountered electric eels. What are they called?
Lightning
Lightning eels.
eels.
So the first boss in mine, actually, just before I say it, they go into that. What I thought was really cool because you were talking about you and Phil doing it together and kind of having extra people there. I thought it was really cool having everyone there because I felt like I was in a tournament and I was like,
Yeah,
I'm in a tournament and I've got like you, Phil, and Mark all just kind of like, like yeah, go, go, go. Like it felt really cool.
yeah,
And that kind of tied in with the theme and having the players there. But anyway, uh, the first of the bosses that I fight summons lightning eels, and so it was constantly summoning these, which isn't as much of an issue for me because I've got retaliate, plus I can do some AoE attacks. So I was killing them all pretty quickly, or they were killing themselves, and then I was just throwing in a loot one every what I don't know 4 or 5 turns, and then just picking up like 6 or 7 things. So I think I ended up making like 30, 40 gold out of that one run,
yeah. You made a
and that just
ridiculous amount, and Phil was even saying like, "Why can't we all just farm yours?"
yeah, pretty much. Like it, and it seems so. I probably will not do the loot for any more of them. Like I just won't take the loot that comes up. I'll take the XP because I'm still going through and playing that, but I don't think that's a big thing because I don't really want to suit power level anyway. But yeah, it was a weird thing that the XP. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably different for every other one where you'd have to go out of your way to pick up the loot. Whereas I was just literally standing there going like, I play 3 cards around. I may as well put one of the ones that says loot one at the bottom and just do that,
Yeah.
right? Like, so
Eh, Technically, like it's weird that with loot structure in there. It's cool that you can actually farm them a little bit to get a little bit of XP and a little bit of money because you can't get items in there.
mm,
It just seems a bit like some classes will have an easier time in their scenario. I could also go in there and farm money, but I'm not killing anything anywhere near as often. I got no summons to deal with, and I've got to go out of my way to pick it up. Not that I'm, jealous or crying foul or anything like that. It's just interesting how that was. I don't think that maybe solo scenarios should be dropping coin at all.
ooh, I feel like if they're dropping anything, coin is the best thing to
Oh,
drop, right?
definitely, definitely, but like nothing. XP
Yeah,
is fine. I think coin is
yeah.
just
But
probably a bit much.
I mean, we haven't seen what happens when you finish them, but I feel like it should just have an XP and maybe loot reward at the end.
How much? Correct. How much money did you make from that run?
Oh, I think it was like 40.
Yeah, do 3 runs and you can buy a really high end enchant, right?
Wow, I mean that's it, right? So and the thing is, and when Phil was like, "Oh, maybe we'll just farm this," and like I've talked about this with you in the past, and kind of redoing scenarios, and Frosthaven does it a bit differently because you can't just go back and farm scenarios because then it ticks the time along. But
Yeah,
in Gloomhaven, it was like, well, if you're gonna do that, you may as well just say that you did it without doing it, right?
correct.
Like if you're just gonna say, "Oh, I'll just run this one until I have 200 gold," right? I mean, if you're doing it by yourself, like it, just do it.
Yes.
You don't have to like, you don't actually. Yeah. So I feel like that's where that ends up landing, right? Like it's a great way to get money, but I'm not gonna do it because it seems cheap. And if we're gonna do it, may as well just say, hey, just give me an extra 200 gold and
Mm,
say that I ran it 6 times.
mm.
Like
But
it's not a game that I need to spend 6 to 7 hours spending my time to do it, right? So.
no, but you may as well just say, everyone, here, have 500 gold, everyone, go shopping, go nuts.
Well,
Who's going to
that's the
stop us?
next thing, right? As soon as you start saying, "Oh, well, I may as well just say that I've got it," then you may as well just say, "Well, I'll say that I'm level 9 and I've got all the equipment I want," right? And then what's the point of playing the game? So,
Yeah. We
yeah,
may as well say we
exactly.
finished it and we've released a million episodes of our podcast and we
Done.
can
Yeah,
retire
we don't
now.
even. Yep, that's it. That's it. So. Cool. Well, look, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to keep it really loose, and I feel like as we go to do more solo scenarios, we can kind of provide little updates. I
Mm,
know that there's some videos, some recordings. We're trying to work out the best way of presenting them because I think they could be cool little snippets. And yeah, if people are keen to hear about our solo scenarios or want to see the footage, I know because usually the full gameplay stuff of Frosthaven can be a bit tedious. Then please reach out.
oh, yep.
There we go. Yeah, yeah. So.
We are struggling tonight.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, forgive my camera dying. We knew that was going to happen, and we're trying to get to the end of the video for that. But I think that's pretty much it. Anyway, I didn't have much else to talk about. I had a mystery kind of topic, but we'll save that for another time when
Mm,
we've got technology working.
yep, that sounds good.
So, I guess to wrap things up, thanks for joining us. You can hit us up on all of our socials and stuff, which I don't know the name of, but I know we're on Twitter and Instagram and Discord and Reddit. And if you really want, hit me up and I'll send you Daddy's mailing address. You can send him a letter in the mail. There's heaps of ways you can get in touch with us.
Yeah,
Heaps.
sure.
Smoke signals, stand on top of your roof and just yell,
Bag of shit on my
Daddy.
doorstep,
That's
whatever.
it. That's it. Make sure it's on fire though. So anyway, I have been your host, Gaz, and been had such a great time. So thanks for listening to me, and thanks, Daddy, for putting up with my on the spot questions.
No, I love it. I like the fact that every now and then we can switch things up. I mean, we could alternate if you want. We'll work out the nitty gritty of that. It's more relaxing this way, and I'm enjoying it. So yeah.
Yeah, so we won't be doing that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the people need structure, and
Oh,
you bring
okay.
structure. So. But anyway, that's it from me. So thanks everyone for listening. I've been your host, Gaz, and I've been joined by Daddy.
Oh yeah. And remember, when it comes to rolling terribly, it's all in the wrist.